Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about the concept of the rainbow currencies. This is a theory that's been circulating for a couple of years now, and it's most recently kind of come across my desk twice in the period of a week. And so I want to kind of break down what I learned, my beliefs about it, and kind of collect some feedback from all of you. Hello, I'm Molly Elmore. Today we're going to talk about the future of money, specifically a couple of theories, concepts that relate to a financial reset, specifically NESARA and the quantum financial system. So a couple of years ago, I say early 2020, around the time the lockdowns happened, I went through my own awakening period and learned that many things in our world were not what I thought they were. That kind of led me to it going down quite a few different rabbit holes for where were we going to go from here. And I discovered some people who were kind of educating everybody about this idea called NESARA, which is essentially a reset of the global financial system, a return to the gold standard, essentially, and major changes like elimination of the IRS, no more debt, kind of a debt jubilee of sorts where all debts are forgiven, and it kind of restarts everything with sound money and sounds like this amazingly awesome, cool thing. And there was a couple of particular people back then that I was sort of following online, Simon Parks, Charlie Ward, and some other guys who were kind of discussing this topic regularly. And they made it sound like it was imminent. Like at any minute, this major reset's going to happen. It's going to be amazing and exciting. And they also kind of alluded to the fact that they had this sort of insider information that was, we didn't have access to, but we should trust them and they would steer us in the right direction. And the thing that happened was nothing. A whole lot of nothing happened. A whole lot of waiting for these imminent things to occur, and none of them happened. So after a little while, I kind of got bored, realized I got all sort of wrapped up in this emotional roller coaster of this stuff, and kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I don't know if this is true or not, but nothing seems to be happening. This is kind of distracting me and stressing me out. So I'm going to just focus on some other things. And I realized at that time that I didn't really know what sound money was. And that brought me into the rabbit hole of Bitcoin and kind of learning about crypto, which eventually took me to XRP and some of the other assets that I'm kind of focused on at this point. A couple of years before that, I had read The Creature from Jekyll Island, which, by the way, probably more than any other book, changed my life pretty dramatically. And one thing I found interesting was when I first heard about NESARA, I did come across a interview with the author of that book, G. Edward Griffin, where he was asked about NESARA, and he was like, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it. So I was like, interesting. These people talking about NESARA make it seem like it's this big deal that will change everything. But the guy who kind of wrote this massive book on the monetary system doesn't know what it is. So that was sort of a flag to me. So I actually kind of gave up on NESARA as an idea quite a while ago. And I actually did an interview with Mel Carmine a couple of months ago, I guess, where I had a debate with him about whether or not the Great Reset and NESARA are the same thing. And I don't know if I'm right about this. I just have a lot of questions about NESARA and this quantum financial system that I can't seem to get answers to. And one skill I have as an analyst is that when things don't line up, when I see or hear contradictions, this sort of alarm in my mind just goes ding, 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 telling me like these don't line up. Like these two things cannot both be true at the same time. And that is where I get a lot of these ding, 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 ding with NESARA. So I'd forgotten about it. I just was like, you know what? I'm going to move on. It's not a really productive use of my time. But twice in the last week, things have come across my desk that are giving some credibility to this idea. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we do a video where we're going to break it down together? I will go through my questions and you might have the same questions. However, maybe you have answers to these questions. And if so, feel free to share your answers with me in the comments. Uh, Honestly, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen regardless of whether or not we believe it. Unless this is this idea that like we as humanity need to collectively want it before it can happen. My tiny little YouTube channel, I don't think will have much of a role in a global consciousness movement. But that aside, let's just say that if this is going to happen, it's going to happen. Then our just discussing it is just something to do while we wait for this monumental reset and return to the gold standard. But I did want to, first of all, show you some of these things that I have come across. The first one was I was watching a interview with a couple of people in the XRP space. And I'm one of the people who is in Jimmy Valley's revaluation committee. And he was doing this interview. And I have a lot of respect for Jimmy. And he had this image as the background of his like Zoom thing, whatever, Zoom background. And it's a colorful, fascinating thing. It was almost impossible to read on the interview thing. And I was going to ask him for it, and randomly he just emailed it to this committee, all of us, shortly after. And I was like, oh, wow. And so I spent quite a bit of time going through it. I was fascinated, and I ended up finding the map maker, and I ended up watching a couple of videos of his where he's done interviews. He's made quite a few of these maps. As an infographics person, I absolutely love them. I've seen a lot of them over the past couple of years. Now, he did sort of state in his interview about this particular map, he did state that he had collected research from quite a few other people, including one of my favorite XRP digital asset researchers, the XX113 guy. I don't know what his real name is. He just sort of goes by this coded handle. And so the contributions to this larger map lined up with what I saw in the XX research. And I'm not sure if the map maker for this GESARA infographic had any other inputs around the QFS and the rainbow currency thesis aside from what we had, what he has contributed. The second thing that came across my desk was an interview in George magazine, which has become revitalized. It was a John F. Kennedy Jr. publication. Back when I lived in New York in my 20s, that publication was around. I had worked for this guy who knew John. And so my friends and I at the time in our young 20s were sort of fascinated with what a cool guy he was. Very heartbreaking when he passed away. So I remember all of that very clearly. And so I've always sort of had a thing for George magazine due to that kind of connection. And now that it's sort of restarted, I'm on the email list for it. And I get an email today, actually, that Charlie Ward has done an interview in George magazine about QFS. And I was like, what? Does this mean QFS is real? Like, how interesting. So we're going to go through some of the more interesting quotes from Charlie Ward that are in this particular issue that don't really make a lot of sense to me. So I'll link you to the whole issue. I think you have to register to get it, but it's free. And there was a couple of strange things. Now, granted, we all come to these perspectives with a sense of bias. Now, most of my career, I worked in advertising research for the online industry. So I've worked with a lot of people in the online tech space, a lot of young, inexperienced CEOs, a lot of older, very experienced CEOs. And I've started to sort of make these generalizations about what a normal CEO looks like to me, how they normally act, and what skills generally are necessary to lead a massively successful project. And this is why I have just so many dings about Tether, is that nothing is normal about Tether in terms of a fintech company. Let's even just call them an online technology company. You don't have this Inspector Gadget thing with this former Hollywood child star. Like, none of that, that's not how it usually works, because you have You need to have specific management skills. You have to be good at things. You have to be a motivator of other people. You have to be extremely organized. And I don't care what companies Charlie Ward worked at, but if he's going to be the ambassador for this global thing, does he have any experience managing a project of that size or even something a quarter of that size? Is he a really good problem solver and project manager to delegate all of the nuances that would be around? Now, if he's just this ambassador, maybe he's not like in charge of any of the tech stuff, but I find his interview to be so simplistic that it doesn't even lend to me credibility of somebody who is thinking about probably one of the largest projects ever. Let's go over a couple examples. Okay. This is sort of the interview where he is introduced to it. He's kind of introduced as this sort of jovial people person, no big deal. When he talks about his background, the interviewer says, "How did you become acquainted with QFS? What is your background?" Charlie responds, "I've been moving currency for 30 years. I was moving money all around the world. I used to love what I did. It was fun. I later found out that I was moving money for the new financial system without knowing it, the quantum financial system. I was part of the foundation workers, if you like, without knowing it." You would think that there would be a different way to describe a complete change of the financial system other than moving money. Now, I understand that payments are a huge part of the financial system, but that's not everything. There's also store of value. There is also a medium of exchange. There are people's like nest eggs. I mean, I guess that's part of a store of value. But like to just say that my qualification for this is I've been moving money and he's been moving it by plane doesn't really imply much understanding of any kind of like tech infrastructure of how that would work. So but that's just the first one. Okay, next one. Then he said, "So how did you find out we have a new financial system? What did you learn about the QFS?" Charlie says, "As I was moving money around the world, I suddenly became aware that there were two financial systems in play. There were two resets in play. I just thought there was one reset, the quantum financial system, a global currency reset or a global financial reset. I thought that was the only one that was available. Then I found out when I was doing my research, there's another one called the Great Reset. It's not using the quantum financial system. Instead, it is using the central bank digital currency. I found out within a truly brief period that one is truly evil and one is good." So first of all, Klaus Schwab wrote a book in 2020 called The Great Reset. So I don't know if he had any like secret research that he was doing. Also, the World Economic Forum was pretty direct in their press events that they were planning this. So this idea that you kind of just like found out is a little bit funny to me. The other thing is that the Great Reset, the nefarious agenda, it involves way more than just central bank digital currency. The central bank digital currencies have not been rolled out. There are multiple facets to CBDCs. It's a more complicated solution. And this idea that you are already using this QFS and not knowing, I don't know if that like gives you a lot of credibility, to be honest. But all right, next. We have learned the intention with the central bank digital currency is if there was another fake virus that comes out, the government could not only shut down your bank account, but they could also stop you from leaving home by stopping your credit cards and debit cards so you could not travel anywhere. This is exactly what is happening in China and now happening in Brazil. It has happened in multiple places around the world. We've seen it happen in the United Kingdom. You can have it happen in America where people were close to the building on January 6th, had their bank accounts frozen. People have been arrested and put into prison even though they were not going inside. This is just commentating. We are seeing an awful lot of this, and this has to do with a social credit score. This is to enslave everybody. I did a video a couple weeks ago where I explained that the media has been lying to us about the Chinese social credit score system. I'm not going to be an advocate for any world government, including China, but I do get mad when we're being lied to about things. And that includes being lied to about the social credit system in China. There is no nationalized social credit system. You would think if you were the ambassador for the QFS, you would be aware of exactly what is really going on and what is not. And you would not be misrepresenting the system happening in China if this was actually your job that you were being paid to do and represent this organization globally. So I was like, at this point, if anybody is on a public stage and they're talking about the social credit score system in China and they're making it sound like it is this government-led centralized initiative that is in place, you lose credibility because we went through it's not. I've talked to people who live in China. We've gone through the articles that it's not what is happening. There are measures in place similar to what we have in the United States and in the West, where private companies are implementing social credit-like systems. But the specific narrative that is being pushed by the media is that the Chinese government is the one controlling it and managing it. And that is just simply not true. You would think that the guy running the QFS would know that and be able to differentiate that. Next thing he says, and I'm just sort of picking different quotes here. The quantum financial system, on the other hand, has to do with quantum technology, quantum consciousness. This is something that will blow people's minds, especially those stuck in a third dimension mindset. But the compliance of the quantum financial system is off planet. So this is another thing that I have a question about this QFS is like, and this is not the first time I've heard that this management team is not of this earth. Okay, well, how are we? So I don't know who these off-planet people are, or what do you refer to them as? I'm not going to be inherently trustful of an off-planet management team that we have not met and is now going to be taking control of our monetary system. So you would think that if you're going to try to build trust among people learning about this, you might explain that in a way that is more educational and endearing and earning of trust. But to just say that the people who don't get it are stuck in this third dimension mindset and you must be a fifth dimension thinker to be able to get it, it's kind of insulting and patronizing and not, again, earning much credibility in my book. Okay, next quote. This is where it gets difficult for people, and it took ages for me to understand, but QFS, understands the intentions of your heart rather than your mouth. There are people out there who are talking the talk right now, but they're unable to walk the walk. This is a journey of truth. I do find this whole passage to be insulting and patronizing, that this QFS, which honestly sounds a lot like an AI, like Skynet thing out of Terminator, where it is now reading your minds and it knows your intentions. So it kind of has this BS meter of sorts. And again, it's saying that if you can't walk the walk, then, you're not going to be able to get it. This is a journey of truth. Okay, well then let's put out some of these specific facts. A lot of times these truth movement people, while they come across initially as trying to be helpful, they're very cryptic and cagey, a lot of riddles, which can be kind of fun, but don't present yourself as this sort of truth movement when you're making it very difficult for people to discern what are the facts and this kind of off-planet management system. Maybe that's true, but you're not exactly laying it out in very clear, simple to understand terms. And you're insulting people who are saying, if you don't get it, you're living in this sort of basic dimension. All right, well, help people figure that out. And he continues with some of this more patronizing stuff. So we'll just cover a couple more of them. Oh, and then this is the other thing that I find fascinating. So the quantum financial system means that we will have a phone like an iPhone that is known as a Q phone, a quantum phone, and our account will be in our phone. We will not need a bank account eventually. We will need what is known as legacy banking for the next 5 to 10 years until we have totally moved through the transition period. So this also assumes that every single transaction is between a person and a person, which is simply not true. The majority of people right now have jobs. They get paid by a company. We also go to companies to buy things like at a store. So I also have a phone bill. I have like utility bill, like this idea that, first of all, that businesses don't pay bills because businesses generally don't have a cell phone. So, okay, so me as a person, let's say I own a business and I have my own personal stuff. Do I have 2 of these accounts? Like this, again, another example of an overly simplistic idea that all money is just from person to person. Kind of one of my beefs with the Bitcoin crowd is that they all think that the whole monetary system is about me sending money to another person without an intermediary. The vast majority of money is exchanged between employees and companies and people paying bills. And banks sending money to other banks. It's not between people. Like, PayPal was not really a big threat to the financial system. All right, next quote covers the rainbow currency thesis, which I find an interesting one. Is actually was really what drove me to do this video. Let's read his passage from the interview. As well as the money you have in your phone, there will be physical currency, which will be known as rainbow currency. This currency will be backed by gold. The currency in your phone will be backed by gold. The other system, the central bank digital currency, is not backed by gold and is therefore controlled by the government. People over the next 3 to 6 months in America will be given a choice to either keep the greenback US dollar, or they will be able to get one-to-one exchange for the US note, or the USTN, the US token note, which one-to-one will give you gold-backed currency. There will be people in America who will choose to stick with the greenback, and they will continue to be enslaved within the system. We will be living in a parallel universe with people who are stuck and left behind and people that move forward. This is a personal choice. I've got a lot of problems with this particular passage, and we're going to go through them one at a time. Namely, number one, if you are the ambassador for a movement that is global and is going to involve a tremendous amount of logistics, to insult people who don't get it or might not be on board initially is incredibly unprofessional. This again comes back to, like, there's certain types of people who are put in charge of big projects. There's a basic standard of professionalism that you would expect. And if you were giving an interview to the press about your particular product, you would not be insulting your target market and saying, if you don't get it, you're enslaved in this system and living in this dark world, you're going to be left behind. Like, that's just not how your PR people would not allow you to do that. Which means that if he really is the ambassador for this movement, it's not being run very well. Okay, let's go back to this first idea. So if you have done any research about the rainbow currency thesis, which I've looked for everything I could, the idea is that there are multiple currencies backing various digital assets. So the whole idea of rainbow is that there is a gold, a silver, and I think there's platinum. There's palladium, iridium, copper. That's sort of the idea of the rainbow, that they're all different colors. So again, if you're the guy who's in charge of QFS, you would mention that, because they're not all backed by gold. That's the idea of the rainbow currency, is that they're different colors in the rainbow. You would think if you're the QFS guy, you would allude to that fact that the rainbow idea implies multiple metals, multiple assets. The next thing that I have a problem with is that he refers to the US dollar, the new one, the one that is backed by gold, as USTN. Now, and he calls it the US token note. Now, if you've done any research about NESARA, which I would hope Charlie Ward has done more research about NESARA than I have, you know that part of this thesis is that the Federal Reserve System is ending, the gold ends the Fed, and that the issuance of the U.S. currency has now become a Treasury responsibility. The Treasury now takes over. People think in 2001 the Treasury has merged with the Fed. I don't know if that's true. That was sort of one of these sort of things going through the online community. Anyway, based on that, USTN stands for U.S. Treasury note. The whole idea is that it's no longer a Federal Reserve note. It is a Treasury note. It's not a U.S. token note. Now, normally I would not give someone a hard time if they mess that up. However, if you are the person who's in charge of QFS, the literal ambassador, that detail matters, and that is not the U.S. token note. And this is supposed to be an official interview with a publication, not someone who is an interviewer maybe, or a reporter messed that up. So I am going to hold Charlie Ward to a high standard and know that USTN stands for U.S. Treasury note. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I don't think I am, because that's part of the whole NESARA thesis, is that the Fed is out. All right, next quote. This is something I brought up when talking about the complications of returning to the gold standard, that at first discussion, or at first introduction, this sounds like, well, this would be such an awesome idea. Gold-backed currency, meaning we won't have inflation. Well, the problem we have right now is we live in a period of high inflation. And there are many people who have worked their entire life to buy a home and have gotten to the point where their home is now paid off and this is their asset for retirement. And if we were to go and implement this gold-backed system very abruptly, as Charlie Ward states, we will see a massive deflation in housing prices. Charlie Ward says people that I've spoken to think it could go back to what 1950s prices were, where you could buy a house for 2 years' salary. I tend to believe that to be right. I think houses, as an example, which are 300,000, would not surprise me at all if they were between 50,000 and 100,000 as early as next year. We saw the crash in 2008. That was nothing compared to what is going to happen next year. I didn't really see this framed in a negative light that like this is going to be a big problem for people. It's just being positioned as like, oh yes, if you want to buy a house, you're going to get a great deal. What about all the people whose life savings is tied up in this? Financial systems do not like abrupt changes one way or the other. Inflation, when it happens abruptly, is a problem. Deflation, when it happens abruptly, is a problem as well. So this is where I, again, find these pimps for NESARA to be very misleading in that they only position this change as this awesome good thing without discussing the very serious consequence on people who have their wealth stored in assets. And it's not just like uber duper rich people. It is all sorts of hardworking people who have spent their entire life paying off a mortgage on a home that they had intended to sell at a high value to fund their entire retirement. So to disrupt that will be really bad. And that is one of the nefarious parts of the Great Reset that is seen as a particular tool to enslave people, is that if your entire wealth is built in this house and I tank the housing market, you're screwed. And now you need my universal basic income, essentially a new form of welfare, which will now make you beholden to the state. So this kind of ties into where I think that there's not a lot of difference between the Great Reset and NESARA when it comes to certain things, one of which is this destruction of the housing market and that being painted by NESARA people as this great thing, because it's just not that simple. All right. This is another thing I have a little bit of a problem with. All right, Charlie says, he's being asked, I think, about people who are critical of this QFS thing. I've had multiple people say that, and those are people who have done no research. You only need to look at research of the quantum financial system. I do not care what people say about me. If you're going to tell me I am rubbish, then come to me with evidence. Anyone can say you are talking rubbish, but come to me. The next part is come to me with provable evidence. When people say, oh, the quantum financial system does not exist, no, not to you, because you've not done any research and you want me to prove it? Well, we have 27 million followers and I've done my research. I've done thousands of hours of research. And on top of that, I am the official spokesperson for the quantum financial system. I speak to the top people every single day. That's a little kind of condescending. And just because you have all of these followers on YouTube, that doesn't really give credibility to this argument. All right, here's the next part, the last part of the article. The interviewer asks, where can people go to do their own research on QFS? I mean, he just basically reprimanded anybody who's a critic for not doing research. So he says, for anybody who wants to study this, go to Quantum.gov. Everything is there. It's about 10 inches of documents if you print it all. If you understand it, you are a far better person than me because it is mind-numbing and mind-blowing. Very interesting quote. And he also, our interviewer also references people to go to his website, charlieward.tv. But all right, let's go visit Quantum.gov and see if all the answers are there. All right, so we are now at Quantum.gov, the official website, according to Charlie Ward, of the quantum financial system. It does say at the top, this is an official website of the U.S. government. Again, I'd like to remind you that Charlie Ward isn't even American. So they really put this English guy living in Spain in charge of it. Maybe. We'll see. I've gone through a lot of this stuff. I spent quite a bit of time down this rabbit hole. There really is not anything on here that specifically addresses QFS or even currencies. This is mostly a website about scientific research into quantum computing. There's a big section about the budget for different departments within the US government, including education for STEM programs to sort of teach the next generation about how to build quantum type technology devices. I even did a search on currencies. The only thing that I found linked over to the White House website about the Biden's central bank digital currency stuff. There is nothing here about a quantum financial system. So if you're the guy it's Quantum.gov, it's pretty easy to find. Now, if you're the guy who's the ambassador for this program and you are telling everybody who is a critic of you because they don't understand this to go to a particular website, I would make sure that that website has clear information about it. There would be a tab that says QFS. There would be maybe like an FAQ that answers questions about it. I did not find any of that stuff. If anything, it's not about monetary stuff at all. It's more about quantum computing, which has applications in many areas of the world. And so to insult people too in this interview, that if you're going to be his critic, go to this website and print out the binders. Binders of what? It's not even clear what this is. So I did not intend this entire video to be a bashing of Charlie Ward's interview, but now it is possible that there is this QFS NESARA thing and Charlie Ward is not in charge of it and he has just made that up. And so he is discrediting a legit movement. That is possible. A lot of people who are been speaking about this do seem to reference that Charlie Ward is the guy in charge of it. But I don't think that he speaks as someone who is an authority on the complicated nature of something like this. He sends people to this website that doesn't have anything clear about QFS or a financial reset or gold or the IRS or debt forgiveness, like none of these topics that are related to this QFS. There's nothing. Now there is some stuff about space things, but it's more, I think, for like the space technology program. It doesn't talk about this off-planet entity who is managing the financial system moving forward. So I was curious when I decided to do this video if I was going to talk myself into being a NESARA supporter or talk myself further out of it. And I guess I'm now at the point where I'm now more skeptical of it than I was before. So if you have any sauce other than Charlie Ward and Simon Parkes and other people like that who are confident in this and sort of can explain logically how it would work. This idea that we're not going to have businesses anymore, I find to be silly. Like there's a lot of things that we as humans in our modern life buy and use that are only really producible by a business. The idea I don't really want to go back to the Stone Ages, to be perfectly honest. And while I think that maybe we could all learn about how to make our own food in a better capacity, to say that this QFS thing means businesses are over, nobody's going to work anymore because we're all going to be given this free money. Again, I just have so many questions about it that it's difficult for me to take this NESARA thing too seriously. So that is my, I'm sorry, somewhat scathing review of Charlie Ward's article in the George magazine. I think the infographic is beautiful that I got from Jimmy, but I just have a lot of questions about the logistics of something like this. I will continue to do my research per Charlie Ward's direction. I'll go through this Quantum.gov website in more detail because all of the material that I've been looking for is apparently hidden. And even though I consider myself quite a skilled researcher, I have not been able to find these answers on this official website that I've been looking for. So, all right, if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. If you'd like the video, that would help me with YouTube. I thank you for that. And subscribe to the channel for updates, and I will see you in the next one.